record. All right, I gotta go back. So today we're talking about controlling anxiety for peak performance. Uh, when you are a high level athlete, right? The mental side of your performance will play as much or if not a bigger role than your physical preparation, right? And one of the things that athletes will that have to something athletes need to know how to manage is their anxiety, their excitement, uh, both sides of both being bored and both being anxious. So today we're going to talk about that, talk about what it looks like, and then talk about how we can manage it on a day-to-day basis to get the most out of our performance. Right. So what does a mentally tough athlete look like? Coach Billy, in 30 seconds or less, how would you describe a mentally tough athlete?
Prepared. A mentally tough athlete is usually, if you think about any situation you have to walk into with anxiety, it's usually a situation where you went, I don't know what I'm doing here. So like the best way in a lot of ways for myself in relieving anxiety and getting that mental toughness is putting myself in uncomfortable situations every day. And then like you just slowly up that. Eventually races feel just fine.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. And we'll talk about kind of being uncomfortable. We'll use that term a lot. For our purposes, when we talk about a mentally tough athlete, we'll talk about these three things. A mentally tough athlete is someone that is confident. Last week when we talked about team building, we talked about the term efficacy, and we talked about the term belief that we can accomplish a task. So a mentally tough athlete believes they can accomplish the task. A mentally tough athlete is focused. They know what they need to be thinking about at each time. And a mentally tough athlete is composed. They're able to manage their anxiety to get the most out of their performance. Right? A mentally tough athlete is comfortable being uncomfortable. So today we're going to really lock in on the composed part. What does it mean to be composed? Coach Billy, 30 seconds or left. How would you describe composed?
Composure to me, it usually is an appearance, but mostly it's an internal step by step. So composure to me it's usually some sort of order, like you do this, then you do this, and then you perform. But someone who is uncomposed is someone who's grasping at unknowns. Like, what am I supposed to be doing right now? Am I supposed to be getting my oars down to the dock? Am I supposed to be, it's 500 meters into the race. Do we settle? Oh God. And then all of a sudden, now that train is running rampant in your head where now you're playing yakety sax. And then that's where the uncomposure creeps in.
Yeah. So what Coach Billy described was an athlete who is over anxious, right? That has so much excitement that they aren't able to perform as well as they could, right? So for our purposes, our general definition means composed is managing your excitement. And throughout the presentation, you will see the word the anxiety level. And we're not sure what that means. It kind of means your excitement level. Anxiety level from a research standpoint isn't always a bad thing. You could be under anxious, right? You could be bored, or you could be super excited. Right? So a couple things, in rowing, we've got training plans, and those are based off of research, right? That the training plan is set up based on research that shows this training plan will get the most out of your workouts, right? These tips for managing your excitement are also based off research, and there's two trains of thoughts that are super important. This first one is called the individual zone of performance, right? You'll see up here anxiety levels. Over here is low, and over here is high. Right? On the right is high, on the left is low, right? Some athletes need to be here, right? Need to have low anxiety. right? Think a golfer who is putting, right? You can't be super excited when you're putting. You got to be cool, calm, and collected. Think someone archery, right? Got to be cool, calm, and collected, right? Others need to be over here, right in the high end, right? If you were throwing a shot put, right, you got to be pretty hyped up to get the most out of it. If you are weightlifting and you're about to squat 700 pounds, you better be pretty hyped up. You can't use the same energy a golfer who's putting uses, right? And then others kind of have to be in here. Uh, so this zone of individual performance changes based on the task that is happening and the athlete. All right. So for the same task, one athlete may be here and another athlete may be here. So this kind of shows us that everyone is different and everyone's peak is going to be different. And you having a self-awareness of your peak is going to be critical, right? How I treat one athlete may be different than how I treat another athlete, and that's because their peaks may be different. But this gets a whole lot easier if you know where your peak is. Our second train of thought is what we call an inverted U, right? This is a U and it's upside down, right? As your anxiety level goes up, your performance improves. But then as your anxiety level, if you get too anxious, it starts to come back down. As a matter of fact, in reviewing this, I got these backwards. Performance should be over here and anxiety should be down here. Anxiety should be on the bottom, performance should be on the left, right? So as your anxiety goes up, your performance goes up to a point, and then as your anxiety continues to go up, your performance will come down, right? So these two should be switched. Switch those two, right? As your anxiety goes up, your performance goes up, and then too much anxiety, your performance starts to come back down. So how do we center ourselves for peak performance, right? Over here, you're too excited, too much anxiety. Over here, you're under anxious, you're bored, right? So based on the situation, we may need to take different strategies to center ourselves. And you'll hear me use the term center yourself often. And let's go into how we plan on doing that. Why are we under? Why are we under on the left side of the inverted U? Sometimes we're bored, right? Sometimes we don't have a goal or vision or connect this, our current task to the greater vision. And sometimes we don't see the importance of an activity. Why do I need to do this? Why is this important? How is this going to help me? And not having the answer to those make us under anxious. And as a result, we're underperforming. The alternative of that is, why are we over? Why? They're all drawings. Perfect. Great. Why are we so nervous, so scared that we can't perform? Oftentimes we are focused on the outcome. Anyone who's been to a national championship is really locked in on, they want to win gold, they want to win gold, they want to win gold. They're focused on the outcome and not how we're going to win gold, right? So what are some strategies for centering ourselves? First one, how do we get up? And I put for practice because most of the time we're not bored at a race day. We're bored for practices, right? And I challenge you to determine your outcome goal. Visualize. If you ever, and we'll talk about this at a later presentation, but if you've ever had a daydream so vivid that you have lost yourself in your mind, right? And you come out of it and you're like, oh, that wasn't real. And you're a little anxious, you're a little nervous, maybe your palms are sweaty. Your body reacts to your mind. And you can use that for good, right? So you can visualize an outcome, right? You can visualize yourself winning something, right? And that outcome will raise your anxiety, right? And raise your excitement, right? Or you can use some self-talk and positive affirmations to focus on the objective of the day, right? What do you want to get done today? What do you want to do to get faster, right? And then talk to yourself and get yourself up for practice, right? Raise your anxiety for practice so you can have a better practice. Right? But then the flip side of that, how do we relax for race day? Right? We got to focus on the process. Process things will bring us back, right? Uh, instead of, we use the example, if you're at nationals and you want to win gold, how are you going to do that? You can work together. Are you going to control your slide? Are you going to get your catches in? Right? Focus on the process, and that will lower your anxiety. You can take some deep breaths, right? And one of the things we'll do towards the end is actually take some deep breaths, and I'll teach you how to breathe, right? And the last one, visualize the performance, not the outcome. Lock in on your process. One of the things, and we'll do this right now, your breaths. A lot of times we can't control several events within a regatta. The weather, the other races, the lane assignment, all of the things that go into a regatta we can't control. You can always control your breathing, right? And when you do your breathing, you want to breathe in for 3 and out for 6. So you'll breathe in through your nose, 2, 3, you'll hold, and then out through your mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When you breathe, you want to breathe deep into your belly, right? And just think about your breathing. Don't think about other things. Come back to your breathing. So the big one, how do we get practice and race day to be the same? Right? Go into each practice centered and with intent. What is your goal of this day? Right? If you know going into practice that you are bored or you're not really excited for the practice, do something to get yourself centered. Establish a pre-row routine that you'll do all the time. Anytime before you row, you do the same thing. Getting your oars is part of it because you always get your oars, right? You're preparing your equipment the same way every time. How do you prepare mentally? Your physical warm-up, your confidence building techniques, and things to focus on. And later next week, the next 2 weeks, we'll do both confidence and focus, right? We'll talk about those things. But you should have a routine before practice and before race that you always do the same way. And then practice your breathing and build on your ability to focus, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and stop talking for 30 seconds. And in those 30 seconds, I just want you to think about your breathing. And Coach Billy, I'm gonna ask you a couple questions when this is over. So I'm gonna start my clock. Go. Focus on your breathing. All right, that's about 30 seconds. Coach Billy, did you focus on your breathing for the whole 30 seconds?
Yeah, I was focusing on it, and then some things started to creep back in my head actually a little bit. Just remembering an email I had to send.
Okay. Did you come back to your breathing, or did you focus on the email for the rest of 30 seconds?
I came back. It came in halfway through.
All right. So that is a skill you have to practice, right? Because it's harder. What Billy did is what we call a refocusing technique. He caught himself and he brought himself back to his breath, right? And that's pretty easy to do in the comfort of your living room, right? On a Zoom call. But it's really hard to do at the line right? In the stake boat, 6 boats across, and it's six eights. You know, there's over 40 of you out there, all vying for first place. It's really hard to then recognize that your mind has wandered and to bring it back. So that is a skill you need to practice, right? But we want to get practice in race day to be the same, and that is we want them both centered. When you go for race day, centered. Uh, Practice, centered. Generally, the direction you're coming from will be different on practice versus race day. Uh, Practice, we want to get up a little bit. Race day, we got to come back, but we always want to be centered. Last slide. Why is this important? The research shows that the difference is often mental, not physical. When I was in grad school, I studied this. I looked at all championship teams. I interviewed Olympians, college national champions, and looked at the research of all the other athletes from different sports. And it all said the same thing. Physically, they were all pretty comparable. The ones that won often had trained the mental aspect of the side, the mental aspect of the sport, right? Train what you need on race day. You have to be able to center yourself on race day, right? When I've used the example at the line, right, for nationals, but 2K day is a day that people are often super anxious about. Right? You can hear that, you can feel it when you walk in the boathouse. You don't even know it's 2K day. You can walk in and be like, "Oh, this is 2K today." There's nervous energy. There's excitement around the boathouse. And we have to start early and learn ourselves, right? As you progress as an athlete, you have to know your body so well that you know when you're anxious and you know when you're not, and that you can censor yourself. But at least for the varsity men, you'll hear me say this a lot: center yourself before big races or at practice. When practice is sluggish, right? You'll hear me ask for more focus on the outcome, right? What are we trying to get done? Be intentful, be purposeful. You'll hear me say those things because we're on the left side of the U, because we're under aroused, right? And on race day, previous teams I've coached, it's like, all right, take a deep breath and focus on what we've done to get here. All right. While I'm still recording, any questions before I shut off the recording and turn our attention to off recording? Any questions? All right, let's go ahead and stop the recording.